Hello. So I don't know about you, but I, for one, just can't wait for Illumination to make yet another $1 billion off of the Minions. That's right. Welcome to summer 2024.
Gaming Cookie Guy
Entertainment.
So for the last couple of years, I have been playing the Screen Junkies / Dan Murrell game of trying to guess the top 10 domestic box office movies of the summer. The only difference between those years and this year is I thought I would film my thought process and invite any of you watching to play along, and we will see how we all did come September. But before I actually get into my 1 to 10 picks for the summer, if you do want to skip to that, just go ahead and go to the comments. I'm going to leave a time link. But I thought it might be fun to look forward at some of the movies coming out this summer, what I'm looking forward to, what I'm not looking forward to, what might be sleeper hits, and what I think is going to perform pretty well. Let's look at all the movies that are in contention for this year's big prize. The summer movie season officially kicks off on May 3rd with the release of The Fall Guy, Taro, and the re-release of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And I'm going to say this right up front, I'm not a huge horror movie fan, so I'm telling you right now, I'm not going to be watching Taro. It might be a hit because there's almost always one horror movie that is a hit. I'm not going to watch it. In recent history, it's almost always been a Marvel movie kicking off the summer. In a lot of ways, they're the ones who have popularized the first weekend of May start. But this year, we get an original movie from Universal. And despite it being an original movie, The Fall Guy has a lot going for it. It has a lot backing it. It is headlined by two very bankable stars right now, those being Emily Blunt and possibly the hottest guy in Hollywood, Ryan Gosling. And I do mean hottest. It's also being directed by David Leitch, who is pretty much the guy in Hollywood for action comedies right now. He's directed Bullet Train, Hobbs and Shaw, Deadpool 2, but unlike a couple of those, The Fall Guys is rated PG-13, which should allow it to reach as wide an audience as possible. I think The Fall Guy is as much of a lock for the top 10 as they come. The question then becomes, is it good enough to overcome some of the more established properties coming out over the summer? The following week, on May 10th, we get the release of The Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, as well as the wide release expansion of the film We Grown Now. I am more than happy to go on record stating that the modern Planet of the Apes trilogy is one of the most solid trilogies of all time. It's just consistently great. So while I'm hesitant to see a new director try and pick up the baton and run with it, I think they've earned my trust, and the trailer does look pretty promising. I think this is another pretty solid lock for the top 10. While We Grown Now looks like it's going to be this kind of coming of age story in the vein of something like The Florida Project, so ultimately its success is going to depend a lot on how believable its young performances are. Ultimately, it's not gonna be a money maker. It's not gonna factor in to that conversation, but I do hope it does well. I'm certainly going to try and find the time to buy a ticket for it. On May 17th, we get 3 more movies releasing. These are Back to Black, If, and The Strangers Chapter 1. The Strangers Chapter 1 appears to be a reboot of a franchise that I didn't know existed until I watched the trailer for this movie. So there you go. If you're a real The Strangers stan, this one's for you. Back to Black is primed to be this summer's resident biopic. This time is going to be the story of Amy Winehouse, as portrayed by Marissa Abela and directed by Sam Taylor Johnson, who also directed 50 Shades of Grey. So make of that whatever you want to. Between Bohemian Rhapsody and Elvis, musical biopics have proven to be bankable in recent memory, but I do think this one will fall a little closer to Rocket Man and Priscilla on the spectrum, considering its subject matter, considering its R rating. But I mean, if it really stands out from the crowd, I could see this finding an audience and maybe cracking the top 10. Finally, on that same day, as maybe a bit of counter programming of some kind, we have one of the biggest wild cards of the summer for me. This is If, not to be confused with the recently released horror movie Imaginary. Bad timing for that. No If is a family movie about imaginary friends directed by John Krasinski and starring Ryan Reynolds. And I do want to say, just as a quick aside, regardless of how this movie does, I want to pass on nothing but respect to these two filmmakers for like keeping original movies and original storytelling alive, like in a medium to high budget manner. Like, say what you want about like Free Guy, Adam Project, Spirited, even Quiet Place. They're all like genuinely and sincerely trying to introduce us to new properties. When it comes to If, do I think that's going to pay off? Maybe. I'm a little pessimistic about its chances in the crowded early part of the summer. I'm worried it's just going to get buried, but I'm willing to be proven wrong in this case, especially if this movie is as pleasantly charming as the trailer suggests. On May 24th, we have two very different movies going into wide release. Dare I say it's this year's Barbenheimer? It is Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, and the Garfield movie. Garfiosa? I have like no personal stakes in the matter. It's not like this movie did anything to offend me, but I think I'm just going to like boycott the Garfield movie. Like, everything about this movie just seems like it was like synthetically grown in a lab or like pulled from AI, from the voice cast to the generic looking plot. I think there's like a 0% chance that this movie makes $1 billion. And for some reason, I have a problem with that. I just cannot abide. But like, I guess if there is some 6-year-old out there, like buzzing with excitement to see their hero Garfield on the big screen and they finally get to do that, like, who am I to stop them? On the opposite end of the spectrum, like Furiosa kind of seems on paper like box office poison to me. Like, it's an R-rated, female-led, gritty action movie, and I know there's examples of movies that have done that well, like the Terminator 2, Alien come to mind, but it's not like a long proven track record. Fortunately, I do think this movie has like the best chance of any to buck that trend and be among the standouts. With George Miller and Anya Taylor-Joy behind it, I really do think this could be a hit. On May 31st, according to the listing I am seeing, I see 3 movies listed for wide release: Ezra, Summer Camp, and Young Woman and the Sea. Ezra is a movie I had never heard about before starting to put together this list, which is kind of why I'm glad I'm doing this video, because I get to know about movies that are coming out that I wouldn't have exposure to otherwise. This stars Bobby Cannavale as a stand-up comedian trying to raise his autistic son, Ezra. And it seems like one of those like heartfelt family comedies. It's probably not one that I'll be rushing out to see opening night, though. Summer Camp is this year's Boomer movie featuring the stars of Yesteryear and inexplicably Josh Peck. So obviously I am not the target audience for this movie, but like, it's a cute idea, and I hope the people who go to see it like enjoy it and tell their grandkids all about it. Young Woman in the Sea. Young Woman and the Sea. Well, she does go in the sea. It's a Disney live-action movie starring Daisy Ridley about a woman who wants to swim the English Channel. And this is another one I only just found out doing this list. I think a trailer just dropped for it, but Disney doesn't seem to be putting that much marketing behind it. And if they're not going to put faith into their own movie, I don't see any reason why I have to. The week after that, on June 7th, marks Will Smith's return to theaters in Bad Boys: Ride or Die with a trailer I have seen far too many times that is far too long. I'm especially interested to see how this movie performs because the last movie, Bad Boys for Life, was pretty much like historically the last movie to come out in the pre-pandemic era. It was like that and onward, and you don't need me to tell you that a lot has changed since then. It will give us like a direct comparison, and so we could see like either the state of the box office or the state of Will Smith's career, maybe both. I personally have not seen any of the previous Bad Boys movies, so I'll probably skip out on this one. But the last one did pretty well before theaters closed, so we'll see if they have like one more ride in them. On June 14th, we have two more movies coming out. We have Inside Out 2 from Pixar and The Watchers. And I literally had to check my notes again because I was like, I just talked about The Watchers. What are you talking about? No. That was The Strangers, you fool. This is The Watchers. Now, naming conventions aside, The Watchers does look like it'll be a far more interesting movie than The Strangers. Like, better, maybe, maybe not, but more interesting for sure. This will also be the directorial debut of Ishana Night Shyamalan, daughter of M. Night Shyamalan, who himself has a movie coming out later in the summer. So, like, maybe between the two of them, if they pool their money together, they'll have a hit on their hands. And the other movie scheduled to release that day is, of course, Inside Out 2. Now, Pixar has had a rough couple of years post-pandemic. Of course, their movies were the ones that Disney decided needed to go directly to Disney Plus. And then when they did return to theaters in 2022, pretty much nobody showed up. Pixar has 4 out of the top 10 highest grossing animated movies of all time. And yet Elemental last year only barely clawed its way to number 10 for the summer. But I do think that has a silver lining, because if Elemental was able to make 10, I think that means Pixar is getting back in audience good graces, and they might be able to fully be back with Inside Out 2. On June 21st, it looks like we're getting what is for sure going to be your dad's favorite movie of the summer. This is The Bike Riders, starring Austin Butler and Tom Hardy. If I'm remembering this right, this is a movie that was delayed in releasing due to the Hollywood strikes last year, and it does feel like the kind of movie that would just do better in the fall. I don't know. Something about it just doesn't feel like a summer blockbuster release. But vibes aside, like, it looks like a very competent movie, one that I'll certainly be going to see due to its stacked cast. Now, June 21st might have the release of your dad's favorite movie, but June 28th promises to be the release of your grandfather's favorite movie when Horizon: An American Saga Part 1, written by, directed by, and starring Kevin Costner, hits theaters. If this movie released as one, like, complete condensed film, or it was for some reason, like, counted that way, I could see a world in which this movie got into the top 10, similar to like how Sound of Freedom did last year. Personally, I'm interested in seeing this, if for no other reason than I want to see if a classic epic style Western will hold up to modern scrutiny. But that's not all for June 28th. Also releasing that day is A Quiet Place Day 1. And based on the trailers, it looks like this installment of the franchise, now directed by Michael Sarnoski, is poised to be a more action-oriented, and it's easily going to be the largest in scope for the franchise. And I think that all of this is going to work in this movie's favor. It is building off the goodwill of the last two movies. It is building off the story as well. I think it's a pretty natural ramping up here, and I have no reason to think it won't make the top 10 unless it really falls below expectations. Releasing on a Wednesday rather than Friday, releasing on July 3rd so it can maximize the July 4th holiday weekend, is Despicable Me 4. And at least for now, based on what I'm seeing, it looks to be the only wide release scheduled for that weekend. So it's going to be the only new game in town for that week. So as teased in the beginning, this movie will probably make $1 billion worldwide. And like, I'm not happy about it. I'm not upset by it. That's just how it is. By and large, it seems like Illumination has found the secret to printing money. And while I expect there to be some regression for the franchise, especially domestically, at this point, until I see evidence that the Minions have fallen off, I refuse to bet against them. They're like the Patrick Mahomes of movies. The week after the Minions hit town is relatively quiet as well. We do have two, I would say, smaller movies going to theaters. We have Fly Me to the Moon and Longlegs. Longlegs, to this point, has been going with some, like, very abstract marketing, which I'll admit has me intrigued, as does the casting of Nicolas Cage. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one. And speaking of interesting looking movies, Fly Me to the Moon is up there on my personal, like, most anticipated. Apple is not afraid to just, like, throw money at movies, at least for now. And I'm all for it because, like, for the most part, they're burning money, but they got money to burn, so I'll keep punching my ticket. This looks very similar to like a couple of the brand or product based movies we got last year that I actually quite enjoyed. It looks like a Tetris or an Air style movie, except in this movie, the product is the moon, which is pretty neat. Also, fun fact, did you know the original title of this movie was In Other Words? That's a joke for nobody. On July 19th, it's the sequel we've all been waiting for. Everybody say it with me. You know what it is. Twisters. Target audience aside, because genuinely, I don't know who this is supposed to be for. This movie has all the trappings of like your prototypical summer blockbuster movie. And it stars Glen Powell, who seems to be getting hot just at the right time for maybe this movie to do something. Like, it feels weird to call a legacy sequel a sleeper, but here we are, and I'm calling Twisters the sleeper of the summer. I could see Twisters totally flopping due to lack of interest, but like, I see the line. I see the way here. Like, imagine you're just on your couch on like a Saturday or Sunday afternoon, and you're like, is there anything new to watch in the theater? And someone goes, well, Twisters is out. Like, that's just the exact kind of movie you go, all right, yeah, I guess I'll see that. On July 26th, I have 3 movies listed as wide releases, but let's be honest, Dee Dee and Fabulous 4 are just also rans to Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine will be Marvel Studios' only release this year. They have put like all of their eggs in this basket. So if this movie flops, they are cooked. They haven't released just one movie in a year. I checked. It was The Avengers in 2012. Like, this is their Avengers level movie. It's got to deliver that type of experience. Now, having said that, if there was one movie I would put all of my hopes and dreams on if I was Marvel, it probably would be this one. This movie is poised to bring Deadpool and by extension, the entire X-Men franchise over into the MCU. And besides that, Deadpool is just an extremely bankable and likable and profitable character right now. So yeah, like easy top 10 lock, but how high is it going to go? Is Marvel in trouble or not? And with that, we enter into the last month of summer movie season, August. And August is such a wild card because like half the movies I'm about to talk about don't have a trailer, and the other half are just going to get bumped off of the summer release calendar anyway. And yet there always seem to be 1 or 2 movies that like claw their way to the top of August and clinch a place on the top 10. So here we go. On August 2nd, we're getting the release of 3 movies: Harold and the Purple Crayon, Kneecap, and Cuckoo. Harold and the Purple Crayon, starring Zachary Levi, at least from the trailer, seems like a fun family movie. I don't know. This one's like, there's not much to say here. If it legs it out, sticks it out for the kids, like maybe it could do something, but let's be honest, it's not going to. Kneecap is a foreign language film about a hip hop artist from Ireland. So, you know, like maybe not a moneymaker, but a $1 billion movie in my heart. And Cuckoo is, say it with me, another relatively generic horror movie. Honestly, at this point, I don't know why I even listed the horror movies, because all it's doing is forcing me to watch all of the trailers. On August 9th, we have a whopping 4 movies scheduled to come out in wide release, so you know some of them are getting bumped off the schedule. But for now, it is The Fire Inside, It Ends With Us, Trap, and Borderlands. The Fire Inside and It Ends With Us both do not have trailers yet, so I'll keep my eye on those, but I'd be surprised if they were big hits. I know It Ends With Us is like adapted from a relatively popular book, so I might keep a especially close eye on that one, but I think the movie that is going to win August is Borderlands. Between Fallout and The Last of Us, it seems like video game adaptations are just really on the rise. They are on a hot streak, and Borderlands looks like it could be the next in line. It looks genuinely fun. It's got a great cast. It seems like it's going to be a good adventure movie. And of course, there's also Trap, which I foreshadowed earlier, but here's the twist. This is the one that's directed by M. Night Shyamalan, and he's done us all the tremendous favor by calling it Trap. That's kind of a mean joke. He doesn't deserve the pot shot, but he kind of does for making The Last Airbender. On August 16th, we're getting the second part to Horizon and American Saga, just a month and a half after the release of the first part. So clearly how the first movie performs is going to directly affect how this one does. And I'm kind of curious to see how this release strategy pays off. Like, everyone, after seeing a movie that you know is a part one, you're always like, man, I wish I could just go out and watch the part two right away. Well, in this case, you kind of can. So let's see if people put their money where their mouth is and actually go out to see it. Also releasing on August 16th is the latest installment from the Alien franchise. This is Alien Romulus. And at least from the teaser trailer, it looks like they're stripping things back. They're taking it back to formula, and they're making this a straight up horror movie. They even hired on the director of another very similar, like, claustrophobic style horror movie. They hired on the director of Don't Breathe. And I actually think this is a smart direction to go in. And dare I say, it could lead to a rejuvenation of the franchise in this new old genre. So I guess we'll see how this one does come August. On August 23rd, there are 3 releases slated. There's Slingshot, which doesn't have a trailer, but then there's Blink Twice, starring Channing Tatum and friends, which is directed by Zoe Kravitz in her directorial debut. As of recording, the first trailer only just dropped for this movie, and it's done its job because it successfully has made me interested in what is going on in this movie. However, I will say this movie already feels very similar to a lot of recent movies we've had, which is like Rich Person Paradise turns out to have some sinister undertones, very like Triangle of Sadness, Get Out-esque vibes. So I'm not expecting this to break free from that shadow. The remake of the 1994 movie The Crow also releases August 23rd, starring Bill Skarsgård in the titular role. I didn't realize this property was based on a comic, but like after seeing the trailer, I totally get it, because this looks so like Spawn, Punisher, Dredd-esque, from that era when people liked their comic books a little grimier, a little edgier. Like, will modern audiences turn up for this one, or will it just be people who liked the source material? I don't know. We'll see. And speaking of edgy comic book movies, just making it into the last weekend of summer movie season after almost a full year of being delayed, on August 30th, we are finally getting the latest release out of Spum, Kraven the Hunter. Oh yeah, it's Kraven time. And if literally any movie from this universe outside of Venom is any indication, this movie will both be terrible and be a money loser. So at this point, I have no reason to think it will be anything but that. Now, I will watch it, but like solely for the chance that I get to make a dumb YouTube video out of it. And even then, no one's going to watch the YouTube video because no one's going to watch this movie. And thus, summer 2024 dies with a whimper. But I should say, that isn't even every movie releasing this summer. I know, inevitably, there are so many movies that I have left out because they weren't on my list. They aren't going to wide release. Some that already come to mind are Maxine, I Saw the TV Glow, and the new Yorgos Lanthimos movie. But that's the cool thing about summer, is there's almost always going to be a movie that comes out of the woodwork and surprises me and becomes one of my favorite movies of the year. So I think the movie I'm most excited about this summer is one that I haven't even heard of yet. But enough of all that. Thank you so much if you have watched this far in the video. Thank you for your patience. Now it is finally time for the main event. What movies do I think will make the top 10 this year? At number 10, I have Borderlands. Number 10 was particularly hard for me to rank because that's the cutoff. That's where I have to decide what movie makes it and what movies don't. So I want to give some honorable mentions out to Alien Romulus, Bad Boys, Ride or Die, and If. But I think video adaptations are just too hot right now. I'm going to ride that poop train all the way to number 10. Please tell me you got that reference. At number 9, I have Twisters. This is a pick I have like zero personal stake, zero faith in, but it just seems like such a safe bet out of all of my options. It's an established property. It's PG-13. It's got Glenn Powell. I think it could be good enough for a 9th place finish. At number 8, I'm going with Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. I'm actually worried I have this one a little too low, but for the reasons I mentioned earlier, I'm more comfortable having it towards the bottom of the pack than the middle, even though I do think this has a good chance to be a breakout hit. At number 7, I have A Quiet Place Day One. It's got a solid release date just before the July 4th holiday. It's a proven property. Now, what is missing and why I don't have it higher than number 7 is it's missing like that really bankable Hollywood star. Now, no disrespect to Lupita Nyong'o. I just don't think she's like as big of a draw for people as a couple of the other movies, as John Krasinski, as Emily Blunt. At number 6, I unfortunately have the Garfield movie, and I hate having it high as number 6. And yet still, I'm probably too low on it, or maybe I'm tremendously too high. I don't know. I am so not confident about this movie either way, but I'm hedging my bets and putting it at number 6. At number 5 is my highest ranked original movie, and it's the one that kicks off the summer, The Fall Guy. So we'll know if I'm like pretty on it or very wrong very early in the year. But I do think this movie's gonna do really well. It's got the right director. It's got the right actors. I could easily be lowballing it. I could see a world where this movie finishes number 1, but I'm playing it safe. And if I was a less cowardly man, I'd probably put it as high as 2. But again, playing it safe, original property, number 5. At number 4, I put Inside Out 2. In my mind, this was like a tug of war. Like, am I going to get Pixar past? Am I going to get Pixar present? Like, which will prevail? And I settled somewhere between the two, between like Finding Dory and Lightyear. And I think that is like number 4 on the list. Cracking my top 3 is Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I could be wrong here. Maybe Apes Fever isn't sweeping the nation. Maybe Apes Together aren't strong. I just have a good feeling about this movie. This is my one, like, I just want it to do well. And here we go. I have been going back and forth with my number 1 and number 2 spot, trying to weigh all the pros and cons. I have finally ended up, and I say this with gritted teeth, I'm putting Deadpool and Wolverine at number 2, which means Despicable Me 4 is what I am projecting, what I am guessing to finish number 1 this year. And here were the deciding factors. Like after weighing it all, in my lifetime, there has never once been a summer movie top finisher that was rated R. So it was that stat, and you never bet against the Minions. And so that is it. That is my list for the top 10 domestic box office earners for summer 2024. Please let me know in the comments, what movies are you looking forward to the most? What movies are coming up? Tell me what you think your top 10 movies will be box office wise and personally. And we will all catch up again on this in September. So make sure you subscribe so you can see that video later in the year. I'll see you then.